I'm playing with this new angle thing. I don't, I gotta get used to this. How are you doing? Hopefully I take you away, I entertain you a little bit, you get a little bit, you know, something new in your life that you can make that's really, really easy. And it is my sassy onion soup. Yay! Basically, sassy onion soup, you can just make, I use 3 onions. You can use golden, red, white. You can mix the onions, whatever you want. You can load it with more onions than this. And then you can also use what is called mirepoix. It's French. It's spelled M-I-R-P-O-I-X. And it's carrots, onions, and celery. And this is a great soup base for many things. This is just the very basic ingredients of to make onion soup. And it makes a fabulous onion soup. You just slow cook it. You can put it in your slow cooker all day long, make your house smell wonderful. You can use the liquid to just have it as a broth for adding potatoes and stew and meats and stuff, or you can extract the onions out of it and put a nice steak on top of it, and then you have the kind of like a grilled onion effect on top of the onion, a grilled steak effect on top of the onions, and then you can also just add potatoes for you, onion potato soup. You can add leeks. Anyways, this is your basic ingredients. Now, to step up, you can use the same ingredients. You'll do a little bit of onions, and I'll show you in a moment, because that's how I like it. A little bit of onions, and then I use beef broth. I use Trader Joe's beef broth, and this one, literally, it is water, organic beef broth, broth concentrate, organic carrots, celery, onions, sea salt, onion powder. So basically, it's like mirepoix in here too, but then this gives you the actual pre-cut. And the reason why I call this sassy is the only thing you have to really chop up is the garlic and the onions, but you can do this all from scratch. You can buy bones, make your own bone broth. You can buy your own celery and carrots and onions and make your own mirepoix. Of course, garlic. I could have got chopped garlic, but I just can't do that one. Now, as a step up, I add mushrooms. If you don't like mushrooms, you can add chunks of potatoes. You can do sweet potatoes, yams. You can do dried zucchini, dried cucumbers. You can add anything you like. You can even though you have these tiny carrots, you can do kind of slivers and shards of carrots to add like a carrot soup flavor to it. There's that. So that's like step number 2 that I like to do, just to give it a little more body to it. And then, when I serve it, I can serve it using my biscuits I made yesterday. And I put that at the bottom, and then I sprinkle cheese over it. Some individuals will take a slice of bread and chop it with a cup, and then float it on top, and then shred the cheese and rebake it with the cheese on top to serve it. Absolutely delicious. I buy Pecorino Romano from Trader Joe's. It's about it's $8.99 a pound, so this cost me, what, $6.83. It lasts me probably a week and a half. Depends how much I'm making. It's a nice accent to many dishes. I'll even scrape it on my eggs for breakfast some mornings and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the power of the internet, and I'm going to chop the onions, and then I'm going to show you what styles I have chopped, just to save you time so you don't have to watch me just go and peel and peel and peel. So, you know, it'll give you an idea. You don't have to do exactly what I want. This is your own sassy soup. As long as you have onions and mirepoix, you can make this. All right, I shall work my magic on it, making everything peel. So I'm back. I decided I'm going to show you how I do the small onion chopping. Oh, let's see. This is different. I got this wider angle for you all, so I didn't want to change that. Let's see if this helps a little bit here. Ooh, maybe shed some light on this. Okay, so I decided to do the small onion and the garlic in front of you. Basically, the medium onion I did in slices, and then the larger onion I just cut so they're in rings to dump into it. I like the different textures and different styles of the onions in the onion soup. It's kind of a preference. So basically, 2 things we're going to do with this. I want one to basically simmer with the garlic, because then that way it releases the flavor of the onion. The second one will be when I enter the broth and the chunks in with the broth. There's 4 different levels of cooking to the onions in this recipe that I do. There's many, many, many French onion soups, Spanish onion soups, Italian onion soups, German onion soups. There's so many different onion recipes that you can do. I just like to get mine into tiny little chunks on the first round because this is what's going to simmer. And if you can't, just be careful because sometimes that knife slips. And I go slow. I'm not a fast chopper. I don't want to risk fingers. I'm one of the people that are going to lose a finger if I try to go fast. And I just put this in my simmer bowl. We're going to go to the stove in a little bit and you'll see how I simmer it and what I'm looking for. I go really slow when I simmer because I don't like, I have an electric stove and it's harder to cool it down than on a gas. You mash the garlic, it releases some of the juice. It also makes it a little bit easier to chop. You can also mash it before you take the casing off, but this one, the casing just peeled right off almost in one fell swoop. So we get the garlic into tiny pieces. Garlic is optional. I don't like to put a lot in there. This just adds a hint, which makes it thicker and deeper bodied. It's definitely a preference. And so we got the garlic, the onions, and the one thing I did forget to say is I use olive oil. I use extra virgin olive oil, and that's another reason why I simmer real low temperature is because this is not a high heat oil. I buy the Kirkland from Costco. It is very rich and peppery, and for the volume and the size, it lasts me a long time. It lasts me like 4 months. And I just add a little bit like that. Get it going. It might be between a tablespoon and a teaspoon. Depends how much you want. Since I'm simmering it slow, and this is what it starts out. I'll be back so you can see me add ingredients once this is simmered to my preference. So here we are at the stove. Just when it begins to simmer, I have this, let me see if I can do this. I have my stove top at 2.6 is the temperature, so I'm doing this really, really low, but guess what? I'm actually going to turn it down even more. This is the first time I'm using this camera stand, so I apologize. It's not as sturdy as I thought it would be. I need a clamp, I think. So let's go down. Just when it gets a little bubbly like this, I turn it down. It's starting to release. I wait just a little bit longer. I've brought my mirepoix over. I brought my mushrooms over because these are my next step. You kind of layer it in to get different flavors going. This was half of the small onion because I like lots of onions. I do have the other half. They're in bigger chunks that I cut. So that way it's a texture thing. It just slowly layers on. I want this to be just a little bit more caramelized. Sometimes if you want, you can kind of brown it gently. Get it browned. It's like with an electric stove, it's a little bit challenging because, like I said, the heat, it'll raise really nice, but then it takes a while to go back down. So I don't have a choice. My condo is electric only, so I don't have the option to do gas unless I bought a little camp stove, which I might in the future. I haven't decided if I wanted to. So these are just about where I like them. And you can cook more. This is just releasing the garlic a little bit to give that little thick body in it. And then I add the little bit of carrots, a little bit of celery. Get that going a little bit in there. You can hear it sizzling. I'm going to put the rest of that in there once I have the water in there too. These are going to be a nice contrast flavor. Got some of the goldenness coming out of the original onions. So now I'm going to get my broth. So we'll put a little bit of broth on here. Turn this back up. It's about 2. And I'm going to give it some time warm back up. And then I'll be back and we'll add mushrooms. Okay, so now it's got both. You can see some of the onions are pretty much translucent and some are nice and they look just a little bit softened. So this is what I'm going for. We're gonna add a little more liquid. Get a little more liquid in there. See if it'll come back up, and I probably should add a teeny bit the first time more. So you just want it to simmer softly and gently and slowly. Come back up. So I'm going to add my mushrooms. So with the mushrooms, they're very absorbent. I want them to pull in the flavor. I tried to bring the mushrooms down to room temperature so it doesn't take as much for them to absorb. When they're colder, the pores aren't as open. I've seen Japanese onion soup where they use the mushrooms and they use chives or green onions. I don't like chives and green onions. I don't prefer them, I should say. I prefer leeks because leeks have a softer flavor. So I want to get this back to bubbling a little bit more. Debating, let's churn it up just a little bit. See if we can get this thing going. There we go, we got bubbles going in there. That's what we want. We want it to release a little bit more. And you could reserve half of the mushrooms if you like them a little less cooked. You could reserve half of them for later on to add once you're done doing the simmering and the basting and all that stuff. Then we add my chunkier onions. Get those in there. Get it going. And once this is reduced just a tiny bit, I will be back. So now this has reduced and some of the more of the juices are coming out of it. I don't think I covered this. This box here is 17 fluid ounces. There's about half of it left because I already made a Sassy onion soup the other day. And I use about a half. You can freeze it in between if you don't use the whole thing and you know that you're not going to make it for another week or two. You can freeze it in between, but I just made it about 3 or 4 days ago and I've never myself had problems. I haven't really read and seen if you should freeze it for 3 or 4 days in between using it. So right now we have the juices releasing. I'm going to add more. Layer, layer, layers. And this, you can leave more. It's all preference, how much texture, how much layers you want towards the end. The crisper, this is all I'm going to leave towards the end. So this is going to be the crunchier side of the soup. If you guys could smell this, oh, ooh, I'm already hungry and it's not even close to being cooked down and yummed up. And so I'm going to put the rest of this in because now from here on out I'm going to be adding water just to accommodate. You can use a bigger pot and more ingredients, so you have some you can freeze in between to have a good base for many types of soups and stews. And actually if you add a little bit of flour, you can use it as a gravy on top of potatoes, and possibly if you like cauliflower. I do not like cauliflower. That one I will say, I do not like cauliflower. But you can turn this easily into a gravy to even put on a steak. You can leave it thin like this to put on a steak. You can thicken it up to put on a steak. You can put this at the bottom of a steak and lay a steak on top of it. You can do chicken. You can do lamb. This is just a nice accent that you can use for a dish if you don't want to use a lot of spicing. I know that there is an argument with salt. For this dish, I don't like to add salt until after I've done either the bread and the cheese I like to accent with salt. I don't like to necessarily cook this one with salt in it. Another way you can do this is you can make potato balls. And you can stuff the potato balls with pieces of cheese. And when you pour the hot soup over it, you have a surprise. You can do the potato balls warm. You can do them cold. Depends if it's hot outside or cold outside. We're in Las Vegas, so when it's 120, sometimes I like to put a cold potato in there with cold cheese, so you get the hot soup on top. But by the time you're done eating it, it's nice, not really cold, but it's like that perfect warmness, so you don't overheat yourself in the summer. So I will be back when it's starting to bubble again. We'll start adding the water. Oh, you know what I forgot? We need one more layer of onions. I'll be 2 seconds back. So this is where I like to add the ones that are cut in a sliver. I save the rings for last because the rings are the ones that kind of tell me that overall it is ready to eat. They do just barely get translucent, and then that's when I like to add those, or like to eat it. So this one is going in. And it's really simple. You get the feel for it. You just got to be a little patient. You can't eat the house in between waiting for it to cook just because the house smells wonderful. All right, I will be back when we're ready to add more stuff to it in the water and cook this all up, because this will reduce down. I know the pot looks like it's thick and full of stuff, but it will reduce down, and then the broth cooks into the vegetables. So when you add the water, it releases it again. All right. So basically, I just wanted to show you. This is my glorified selfie stick that I use by the stove. I definitely have determined that I need a clamp to clamp to the edge, just so I feel safe and I'm not nose diving the camera into the pot. But anyways, I just thought I'd show you. You can do this. If you wanted to do a YouTube channel, have fun. Let's teach each other. Let's take each other away on a little mini vacation of fun. So this is what is called a microplane. I prefer this one for grating cheese. I'm not going to grate the whole cheese in front of you because I'm sure that you know grating cheese. The nice thing about these though is you can go back and forth, whereas most cheese graters you just go one way. So you can go basically back and forth. If I have a regular grater where I go one way, for some reason I always chip my knuckles or I'm shaving a fingernail, but for this one you can just go back and forth however you want, and it works pretty quick. I'll put a link on there. I think I got this one, I want to say like 10 years ago at Target. I don't know if they still have it. I would take a peek. They have some nifty tools once in a while that you can pick up there, but I do a lot of shopping online now because, you know, 2020, what is this, 2020. It's the horror is a 5-star, drama is 4.5, action is 3.5, and then repeat is a 0.5 star. I actually know some people that had really good years in 2020, so they can't complain, and I'm glad that they did. I've just had fun like everyone else. I couldn't miss having all that fun. So there we go. I guess I did grate the cheese right in front of you. All right. I'm back! Yay! We are done. This is my sassy onion soup here. Let's try to, it won't go down. Let's see if I can get it down. Maybe. There we go. It's like either you see my face or you see my soup. I don't know. So basically what I look for is some of it is sinking down and some of it stays floating on top. You can reduce it where everything starts sinking. To me that might be a little bit too much unless you just want to get the vegetables out to use for another dish, and then you have the top as a broth, and then you can strain it and have the clear broth and so forth. A thing I didn't mention is I always use a wooden spoon. My friend's father used to make Hungarian potato soup, and he said always use a wooden spoon with the metal because that prevents a slight metal taste. It took me a while, but I was able to isolate and say yes, it does taste much better without using a metal spoon. So I try to always use a wooden spoon when I'm stirring and cooking something like this. It's preference. Some people can't taste the metal, but I never knew about it because nobody told me before. So I have my regular biscuit. I have my pumpkin seed biscuit. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take the onions. I'm doing splash reduction. Always do the vegetables first. That'll prevent splashing. Can't guarantee 100%. Look at all these onions. Oh, Yummy. And then I put the broth on. And yummy. Also putting the vegetables down like that, it kind of helps from the biscuits immediately floating to the top. And I'll put this on the side. And then I take my cheese and I just lay it on top. This is the point where if you want to, you can take the rim of the cup before you do all this, and you can round a piece of bread, and then you can put the cheese on top, pop it in the oven, bake it, and watch it and see where it is in general. How you like the cheese melted and bubbling and possibly slightly brown, not too golden brown. So I didn't do a taste test. Well, okay, yeah, I tasted it a few times. But what I do is just taste it. Oh, this is gonna be so good. And being in the refrige a few days, probably tomorrow it's gonna be really good. The second day, and then by the third day I've eaten this all up. And if I can't, it depends what's going on, I will pop probably a half to a third of it in the freezer, and then I'll have a nice base for chicken, beef, whatever I want. You could easily make this vegan. You just would take off the bone broth, and then like the biscuits, you wouldn't use the biscuits because it has heavy whipping cream, and you would just not use the cheese. You would use a different cheese, and then just a little bit of cheese. You can add salt if you want, but I find the cheese adds the salt, so I'm good with it. Yep, very good. Home run. Happy cooking. I hope no, that's pretty silly. I hope I took you away. I hope you enjoy cooking, explore, and if you're interested in YouTubing, start somewhere. Have a great day. I hope I taught you. I hope I entertained you. Take care.